My first voting experience, I was really excited because I actually wrote my senior thesis in high school on the importance of voting for the ages 25 years and younger. And so I was really excited to make my voice known. And I still remember going in and being excited to press those buttons and seeing everybody's names and just feeling like my voice was heard and that I was able to make a difference with my vote.
Well, I was thinking about that question on my first voting experience. I won't remember the first one because it was quite early on, but I remember the time well because my dad was very much into politics, as most parents are. He was on the town board, and he even told us how we were going to vote. Isn't that interesting as I look back after I had my own kids? So it wasn't the force of hand on how my father told me I was going to vote, but that's okay. He meant well, he was really involved and he cared, and he was on the right track anyways. But I really enjoyed talking politics with him over the years, so it really brought us closer together. So I really did enjoy that, and every time I vote, it's very memorable to me now.
So I turned 18 at the beginning of my senior year of high school, so I was probably one person who got to vote while I was still in high school, so I was just excited to exercise that right to vote. And I remember that one of my good friends, her uncle was running for property assessor, so I had to make sure that I voted for Uncle Bubby. So it was just exciting to be able to vote for the first time.
Yes, my first voting experience was actually in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. It was a judicial election, and I was so excited to vote for the candidate that I voted for because she was out in the community. I was able to meet her and just really see what she was about, so voting for her was like so fun. I was like running to the polls, trying to get everybody to vote for her. And it's a really great voting experience looking back.
The first time I got to vote was actually in the 2000 presidential election. I had turned 18 in 1998, but there wasn't a big election that year. And so the year 2000 was when I got to vote. And I'm sure everyone remembers that election. Everyone went to bed that night thinking one thing, or I don't think the election had been called by then. And then the next morning waking up and then the whole controversy with that. But it was really cool because that night, sitting in one of my sorority sisters' rooms, we were sitting there watching the election night results come in. We weren't out doing the college thing. We were sitting there watching that because that was important to us. And so that was a really great first voting experience because I saw a lot of the process happen. And so that was the first time I got to vote.
So I can remember as a child going with my parents when they voted. And that was back in the day when you had the bar that you pulled and the curtain like closed behind you. And I can remember going with them and learning about what voting was. And so as soon as I turned 18, I registered and I was ready. And I think that was because my parents instilled in me the importance of voting.
In the late 1960s and early 1970s, there was a lot of discussion about why young men were able to fight in the Vietnam War at the age of 18, but they weren't allowed to vote. And after several years of those discussions, Congress passed and the states ratified the 26th Amendment to the Constitution, which changed the voting age from 21 to 18. It just so happened that a little over a year later, I turned 18 in 1972, and less than 2 months later, I was able to vote for Richard Nixon. I proudly cast my vote in a landslide election where he defeated an ultra-liberal Democrat by the name of George McGovern.
That's very interesting. I would talk about my first time to vote, but that wasn't my first voting experience. My first voting experience came when I was 6 or 7 years old, and I didn't vote, but my grandfather was running for sheriff in our hometown, and so it was all hands on deck on voting day. So we all as children had to go to the voting polls and hand out cards and ask people to vote for our grandfather for sheriff. I wasn't sure what to say when I handed out the card, but I heard my grandfather tell somebody, "I would appreciate your vote." So I thought, that's what you're supposed to say. So when I handed this little 6 or 7 year old girl, handed out cards, and every person I handed a card to, I said, "I would appreciate your vote." And they would all kind of snicker. and thought that was so cute and funny. And they said, well, you're awful cute to be running for sheriff. So I thought, that's funny, they think I'm running for sheriff. But he won the election, but I remember it was a memorable day. We all gathered around as a family and watched the returns. But I did wonder for a while why people looked at me and laughed and said, you're awful cute to be running for sheriff. But it was memorable, and we were excited that my grandfather won that election.
That's cute. So tell me about your first vote when you got to vote the first time. How's that memorable to you when you were doing that?
I just remember that my dad made it clear that as a citizen, if once you had the privilege to vote, it was your responsibility. And he also said you have no right to complain about anything that's happening in our town or nationally or whatever unless you vote. And then you earn the right to complain.
My most memorable election was definitely the one that I got to vote in where my name was on the ballot. So that was in 2018 when I first ran for city council, and walking in and seeing my name actually on that screen was so surreal to see that I was actually doing this was actually happening. And I'll be honest, I did vote for myself because my mother always told me, if you wouldn't vote for yourself, why would anyone else vote for you? But getting to see my name on that ballot and getting to vote, that was definitely my most memorable election.
Yeah, my most memorable election was the 2020 election, and that's because I was able to go to the White House and hear Donald Trump during his first term just a few months before. And I was very fired up. I was with over 1,000 minorities, so I was like, there's no way he can lose, you know? And yeah, I was just really, I lost a lot of friends during that time because I was just speaking my truth. And that definitely, looking back and all that came with that election, has to be the most memorable one to me.
I've participated in a lot of memorable elections, including Donald Trump's defeat of Hillary Clinton. But I would have to say my most memorable was the election of Ronald Reagan in 1980. If you are too young to remember the dark, dreary, depressing years of the Jimmy Carter presidency, you cannot fully appreciate the immediate change in the mood of the country when Reagan was elected. Jimmy Carter had made us feel like America's best days were behind us. Ronald Reagan told us that all we had to do was release the energy and the goodness of the United States from oppressive government regulation, and we could once again be great.
The most memorable election, I think, was in 1980 when Ronald Reagan was running for president, and I don't know why Ronald Reagan made such an impression on me as a young person, but I just thought he seems like he would be the best president, and I liked what he stood for. I liked that he was very conservative. Even as a young person, I considered myself a conservative. And I remember being at college at Tennessee Tech, and I went home specifically to vote and stayed home and watched the returns with my family, and I was so excited when Ronald Reagan won as president. That was memorable to me, probably the most memorable election.
The most memorable election is the one that I voted for my Uncle Ryan in. It was actually an absentee ballot at the time I was in college, and I was still obviously registered to vote here in Putnam County, and so I did an absentee vote, and I sent a picture to him with my absentee ballot, and was very excited about it. So that's my most memorable election because it just has a special place in my heart.
The most memorable, and even with that one, I can go way back, really. But still, it's a recent one with Donald Trump when he won. And I was thinking, why? Why is it that mattered to me? Because he brought the country together. I'm really big on community, bringing people together. And that's what I love the most about what he did. He brought people together and he meant what he said. And even up to the year of the election, he was already affecting everything. I saw it where I was. He was affecting businesses already, affecting people's attitudes already. It was community pulling together. Let's protect our country. Let's look out for each other. So I really, really appreciate Donald Trump for in his election and when he won for that one. I'm thankful for what he did and putting himself out there, and it was nice to see somebody who wanted to hit the ground running, and he sure did. So that's a memorable one for me.
So I think this election is going to be the most memorable to me because we have so much riding on it, and there is so many important issues in this one and things that are important to me with, as a school board member, education is obviously important to me, but the right to life and border security and all the things that we've got going now. So I think this one is going to be the biggest one yet for me.
What drives my decision to vote? Faith. My faith. Vote righteous. That's what my pastor says a lot, and I agree with it. Vote righteously. So if you vote the way that God leads you, I think that you'll be putting the right people in place.
It definitely depends on the election, the type of election. When it comes to a presidential election right now, my biggest issues or that I'm concerned with are foreign policy, immigration, and education. Also, medical freedom. My daughter's never had a vaccine, and I'd like for her to stay that way until she's 18. So small government, definitely keep government out of my business, and just a candidate who will keep the Constitution alive and conservative.
The biggest issue for me that drives my decision when it comes to voting is what their stance is on life. Not just being pro-life in the womb, but pro-life being womb to tomb. What is their pro-life stance? That's pretty a make it or break it decision for me and what I look for when I'm looking at candidates.
Well, obviously, again, as a school board member, education is very important to me. Border security is very important to me, and in my other job, I'm an attorney. So my husband is a criminal court judge, and he signs search warrants all the time where they're searching for drugs, and these drugs are coming over our borders. So in our life, in the life of my family, that's going to be so important. And of course, again, the right to life and things that we've got coming up this time, super important.
Why is it important for women to have the right to vote?
Well, women have experiences that men don't have, and we can be heard in things that are important to us and what we want for our families if we get out and vote. So it's just so important that we do that, and women are in leadership, and we're on the school board, and we're everywhere, so we need to have our voice heard.
So being a mom and a nurse practitioner, those are definitely issues that I'm going to be more passionate about. So things dealing with education, the family, healthcare, those are things that are really important to me right now when I'm voting. But also what's really important to me is who am I actually voting for? Do I trust this person? What's their track record? Do I think they'd be a great community servant as well as a great leader? So taking the issues that are at hand, mixing them in with the person who I'm actually voting for, and that's what really drives my decision to vote for someone.
I'm not sure it's an issue, but when I look at the person I want to vote for, I want a person of integrity and strong moral values. I'm a Christian. I think it's important to have Christian leaders who seek the wisdom of the Lord when they're making decisions. I do that myself in my role as a school board member, and I would like to think our leaders did that as well. So that's important to me. And just intelligence and good common sense, somebody that's a critical thinker, and somebody that inspires the people under them to work hard and to make good decisions. Nobody, a leader can only be a leader if people are willing to follow them. And they set the standard, and I take it very seriously, and it's not necessarily issues that drive me, but the person the person that's going to lead.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe they didn't have a right to vote. Isn't that crazy when you look back on it? But what I always think about, what I've always observed, is that the women have always had say anyways. I truly believe all the greatest men that everyone talks about in history, if they had a wife, there was a wife at home talking with them and discussing with them. Maybe the guys don't say that, my wife Judy says, or thought, and they guys may even take credit for what they're doing, what they're saying. However, I fully believe, going way back to the beginning of time, that truly the women have already been having the ear of the men as they voted. Like when we did turn over for the women's right to vote. But I've always thought, like everybody else should be thinking, we're equal. We're equal in our thoughts, we're equal in community, we're equal in our household, our families. Everything that we do, the men and women are equal. So I can see why that we should be. We're just as equal, just much input, and if anything, the women are the networkers, the community, the pulse of the community most. Truly, they get out there and they network. So that is really why I think the women have always should have been voting all along. Their pulse is right on everything that needs to be fixed.
I believe it's essential for women to have the right to vote, and I call on the resolutions that were passed by the women who began the suffrage movement and made it possible for us to have the right to vote. They had a lot of excellent points, but I'll name just two of them. First of all, women were not allowed to participate in a government whose laws they were required to obey. And second of all, if a woman earned any wages at all, they were taxed by a government that, again, she was not participating in and had no choice about, which sounds to me like taxation without representation, a founding principle of why we separated from England in the first place.
Because there's a lot of women who are heads of households, like myself, and I feel like seeing that I am the head of my household, I know what's best for it, and it would suck if I was not able to vote on my beliefs or what I feel like would best run my household. So I think it's great that women are able to vote. I'm glad we have that option to vote, and I think a lot of women are smart enough to cast the vote that's right for them.
It's important for women to have the right to vote because they make up over 50% of the population. The majority of the population are actually women, not men. And so it's good that our voices are known. Women bring so much to the table when it comes to just things that you may not think about. I know a big thing that's happening right now is talking about paid family leave and what does that look like. And a lot of women are living that right now and going through that. A lot of things are, what's happening in the classroom and things like that. And us as women, we are currently living it. And so it's important that our voices are known, not just as people and people who live in this district and in this nation, but as women. It's important that our voices are known and they're known loud.
Oh, I think it's important for all people to vote, not just women, but when I was growing up, for example, there were no female principals, and since I went into education, there got to be more and more women, and I myself was a principal and a leader in the district. And I just saw how far in my lifetime women had come. And I think anybody should consider voting a responsibility as a citizen, a privilege and an honor that lots of people fought and died for. And I don't take that for granted. So I think we have a government of the people and for the people. And that's all people. So all people should have a say in who is leading our government.
I just think that it's very important that we have that right to vote. As far as just women and mamas go, we are the heart and soul of the family, and I think that our instinct is to protect that at all costs, our children, and just the family values and so forth. So I just think it's very important for that. So.
Well, women have experiences that men don't have, and we can be heard in things that are important to us and what we want for our families if we get out and vote. So it's just so important that we do that, and women are in leadership, and we're on the school board, and we're everywhere, so we need to have our voice heard.
So I'm actually going to quote my daughter on this one. That's the one who's been asking me the questions for this video. But she did her 4th grade history report on Susan B. Anthony, and I did my 5th grade report on Susan B. Anthony, so we have that in common. But what she said was, just because we're women, why should we not be able to do the things that men get to do? And I think just that answer right there, we were not allowed to vote just because we were women. And now here we are, just, some 100 years later, we've got women who not only do we get to vote, but I've got the amazing opportunity to serve as the 2nd female mayor for the city of Cookeville. So taking it from there to here, having that right to vote is one of the main things that got us here. And so I'm going to give my 10-year-old daughter credit and say, if men can do it, why can't we?
People died for us to have the rights that we have in this country, and it's just important that we exercise all of them that they've given us.